Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about the New Jersey Devils. Yep. It feels like it's time to talk about the Devils. They've taken a bit of a turn lately. I totally get why. I'm going to get into why. Is it early enough to turn around? Well, of course it is. They're 8-8-1, so the record's not awful. They're 4 points back of Detroit and Philadelphia, who are tied for that final playoff spot in the East. So, as tough as things may feel right now for New Jersey fans, I don't think there's reason to panic yet. Although I've started seeing the old standby, which is fire Lindy. Hey, you got to play the hits. So they're 4-6 over their last 10. That's the 10 games without Nico Hischier. So there's definitely a correlation between Hischier's injury and this team starting to have some trouble. Now, on November 22nd of last year, they were 16-3. So they had the 13 games above 500 start to the season. They rode that to a season where they were 30 games above 500 by the end of it. And again, did it raise expectations too high? Maybe a little bit. But that being said, do you want to peak in November or do you want to peak in April, May, and June? You'd rather peak in April, May, and June if you're a team in the National Hockey League. So when we look at their record, and again, they were 4-2-1 at the time that Hischier got hurt. So the last game he played, they ended up 4-2-1, and they won the first couple of games where he was out. But since he's been out, they've won 4 out of 10 and only 2 of their last 8. So I wanted to focus on the last 8 games and get into where they're losing the games. And the reality is they're not starting on time. They've also had a pretty tough schedule. So November 3rd, away from home, they lose 4-1 against St. Louis. St. Louis is off to a respectable start. They are 10-7-1, better than expected. They trailed 2-0 in the second, the Devils did, and when you're trailing on the road, it's tough to come back. Akira Schmid in that game, 31 saves on 33 shots. 2 nights later, they go into Chicago, and they win 4-2. Of course, Chicago's 5-12 on the season, so that's a game you have to have if you're New Jersey, but they trailed 1-0 in the first. And this is the thing that got me when I was going through and getting ready for this video is they're not starting on time. This is part of your problem. Vanacek in that game, 32 saves on 34 shots. 2 nights later, they are in Colorado, playing in Denver. They lost 6-3. Colorado, of course, is 12-6 to start the season, and Colorado was kind of ticked off. Colorado, they seem to alternate between games where they look kind of in the middle, and then just games where they look like they would just want to off the opposition quickly. In this game, oddly enough, New Jersey did score first, and yet they lost 6-3. Vanacek, 26 saves on 31 shots. Then they came home, and on November 10th, they lost against the Capitals 4-2. Well, the Capitals are 10-4-2. They have a very good run going as well. And they trailed 2-0 after the first, did the Devils. So you're down 2-0 at home. Your fans don't really get into it, and it's kind of a rough night for you. Vanacek, 3 saves on 5 shots. Schmid, 20 saves on 21 shots. And so, yeah, overall, not a great night for the Devils. Then they go on the road again. So they only had the one home game. They can't get acclimated. They go back on the road. They go to Winnipeg on November 14th. So 4 days between the home loss against Washington and the road game in Winnipeg. And they lost that one 6-3. The Jets are off to an 11-5-2 start. Very good team. And again, it was a slow start for New Jersey, who trailed 2-0 in the second period. Akira Schmid in that game, 25 saves on 30 shots. He has not seen the net since then. So we have at times had a bit of a goalie rotation in New Jersey, but it clearly seems like for Lindy Ruff, Vanacek's his guy, and we can get into the discussion about whether or not Vanacek is going to be that goalie for New Jersey, because there's been discussions about whether or not New Jersey needs a goalie for a while now. Then on the 16th, again away from home, they're in Pittsburgh. They won that game 5-2. Pittsburgh's 9-9 so far this season. They lost that hard-fought game yesterday at home against the Rangers. In that game, the New Jersey Devils trailed 1-0. They did trail first in it. So again, you're chasing the game. Vanacek saves 21 out of 23, and then you're dealing with some empty netters and all the mess that goes on there. November 18th, they're back home just for one game. So again, it's one game at home. It's against the Rangers. They lost 5-3. The Rangers are 13-3-1. They're a very strong team, and New Jersey trailed 1-0 in the first. Vanacek ends up with 30 saves on 34 shots. And of course, you're not going to get any kind of level of mercy from the New York Rangers after the first round last year. They're going to come in and spank you at home. Then they go on the road last night, November the 22nd, in Detroit. They lost 4-0. Detroit 9-6-3. They've had some ups and downs early in the year, but of course they allowed 3 goals in rapid fashion in that first period. They're down 3-0 after one, and they never really got into it. They only managed 2 shots in the third period of that game. So Vanacek saved 24 out of 28 last night, and he's part of the conversation about what's gone on with this team. Now, when you look at the upcoming schedule, it's important to note this is a very winnable schedule for the New Jersey Devils. The conversation we're having right now about this team being outside the playoffs and how bad things have been, in part has been because they're against really, really good teams, and their schedule has been kind of a mess. You've got 3 away, 1 at home, 2 away, 1 at home, away from home, and then they're coming home for 3. So their next game is at home against Columbus. You have to win that or else panic stations intensify. They're at home against Buffalo. Again, you kind of have to win that one, but those are winnable games back-to-back. And I don't mean those are back-to-back nights. I don't think they're back-to-back nights. And then they're at home against the Islanders. So the next 3 games at home are against opponents who are all below the playoff line and should be teams that New Jersey can beat, even though they don't have Nico Hischier in the lineup and they don't have Timo Meier. Then they go to Philadelphia. It's a 1-game road trip there. Then they're at home against San Jose. And then they go on the road again. So the San Jose game, that's a winnable one as well, of course. So that's, Philadelphia? Philadelphia, is that a winnable game, is it not? It should be. So New Jersey could go on a bit of a run over the next 5 games, and suddenly people are like, wow, they've turned it around. When in reality, it's just their schedule got a bit easier. Then they go on the road, and this road trip's going to be interesting, because Vancouver, it feels like, have come down off that high they were on early in the year. Seattle, that's a winnable game, and then they go to Alberta and they play Calgary and Edmonton. Calgary and Edmonton, of course, both of them just disasters unfolding. So if New Jersey plays their cards right over the next 10 games, they could rack up a bunch of wins. Now, the 10th game out of that 10 games is home against Boston. So let's just assume they lose that game against Boston. Let's just throw that assumption out there. Boston comes in and beats New Jersey. But out of those other 9 games there, at least 7 of them are ones they should win. So we should be talking about a team 10 games from now that's won 7 of their last 10. And if they haven't, that's where we start get into the conversation about how you fix it. And obviously, the simplest job would be to replace Lindy Ruff. And there may be a lot more calls for that if they don't get those wins over the next 10 games. But I wanted to look at player stats too. Jesper Bratt, 17 games, 8 goals, 15 assists, 23 points. No complaints with Bratt. Jack Hughes, I could try to complain about Hughes, but even I'd hate myself over it. 12 games, 6 goals, 16 assists, 22 points. One of the best players in the National Hockey League right now. Tyler Toffoli, and this is where it's interesting for me. Toffoli, 17 games, 9 goals, 7 assists, 16 points. He has a plus-minus of -10. The minuses on this team are high, and I wanted to highlight a few of them because I think one problem the New Jersey Devils have, there's a lot of speed. There's a lot of youth, a lot of talent, a lot of offensive creativity, but are there defensive stalwarts amongst the top 9? Are there players with Nico Hischier out that you look at and say, that's the guy who's going to lock the game down late? That's the forward you're going to put out there, that veteran that's going to really make sure things are good. So what if Patrick Kane got added at some point, and if you were looking for some kind of veteran leadership there? Now, defensively, Kane's not going to be Hischier, but, right? So I'll just throw that out there. But anyways, New Jersey's got some interesting decisions to make because Toffoli's -10. Again, plus-minus is a flat set, sure. But what it tells you is these guys aren't exactly defensive stalwarts, and you do need that defensive player to be out there with them as well. The guy who can play at both ends. Now, there are players who are supposed to be on that level. We'll talk about that too. Dougie Hamilton, 17 games, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. You know what you're getting with Dougie. Mostly an offensively minded defenseman, but he can play an all-around game as well. Eric Howla, 16 games, 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points. It's refreshing that Howla's being honest about the struggles of the New Jersey Devils, feeling that they've played a bit arrogant and kind of like meaning they assume they're going to win games. But again, I would point out they're against teams that are playing really, really well. So there's that side of it too of, well, New Jersey's supposed to be one of those teams that's playing really, really well. I agree, but they are playing against teams that already are playing quite well. Timo Meier, 14 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points. He's a -12. And I have discussed Meyer and his place with the team before. I was honestly kind of surprised when they brought him in. I'm mildly surprised they signed him to the long-term deal. Now, Meyer is a really good goal scorer, not known for his defensive work either. So, again, it felt like with Meyer, you're getting more of that offensive, go, go, go kind of thing. Toffoli, same thing, right? He can score goals for days, but you need somebody who comes back and plays on the defensive side too. Luke Hughes, 17 games, 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points. His advanced stats are elite. Very good puck possession numbers between all three of the Hughes brothers. I've even gotten to the point now where I'm looking at the three Hughes brothers and I'm asking myself an honest question. Have I ever seen a family dominate the NHL stats like these guys do? And my answer right now would be no. So, yeah, don't be surprised if there's a video on that at some point. Marino, 17 games, 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points. Very good, solid all-around defenseman there. Palat, 17 games, 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points. He's slowed down. And it's noticeable that he's having more struggles offensively than he did in Tampa or than he did last year. And it's kind of what happens when players get older, right? Then you've got Holtz, 17 games, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points. Holtz has been good this year, but again, mentioning, you need more defensive guys, it feels like a lot of the players in New Jersey's lineup, a lot of the forwards, are built from a very similar style. Go, 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 skill, all skill, speed, and offense. Going for the offense. Holtz is seen as a guy who's, ideally a goal scorer at the NHL level. That was always the scouting report on him. And then you've got Dawson Mercer. Mercer's supposed to be one of those guys who's the all-around Swiss Army knife player who plays at both ends. 17 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points, and he's a -8. So that's one that stands out to me because for Mercer, they would have wanted probably a few more points. But again, on the defensive side, that's where you're looking for a bit more. Nico Hischier had 2 goals in the 7 games he played at the time of his injury. He was not a positive in the plus-minus category either, but this is a team that has allowed a lot of goals. So when we look at the goaltending, I think there's some reason for concern. Vanacek, 7-5, 886 save percentage. Schmid, 1-3-1 with an 885 save percentage. So win-loss record-wise, Vanacek's the better goaltender, but their numbers are very, very close. So do they have a true number one goaltender? My answer right now would be probably not. No. They have a 1A, 1B situation where when these guys are both going, it'll be fine as it was last season. But when both of them are putting up middling to struggling numbers, it's tough because then you need to score more. And if you're asking your forwards to score more, you're probably going to be vulnerable to even more goals against. This is where it gets worse. This is where things can get really out of control. Now, this season, they're scoring 3.42 goals per game. That's down from last year, but not by much. Last year, they were scoring 3.52 goals per game. The goals against is where things really stand up. So, comparing the numbers over the last 2 years, back in 2021, 2022, which was a down year for them, right? They were scoring 2.99 goals per game. So, they're still well above that. The goals against, though, 3.82 goals against per game right now. Last year, it was 2.71. They're more than a goal per game allowed above last year. This is absolutely what's tripping them up. So last night you can come out of last night's loss and say, what a disaster. Agreed. But that one's more of an aberration than anything. They're just allowing too many goals. There's not been that commitment to defense in their game. And again, is that part and parcel because they allow 6 against Colorado, they allow 6 against Winnipeg, they allow 5 against the Rangers. These are teams known for being able to score. Yeah, that's part of it, right? But again, you have to have that team commitment. Their goals against right now is higher than it was at the end of the 2021-2022 season, where they allowed 3.68 goals against per game. There's a lot here to tell me that this team should turn things around at least a bit over the next 10 games, but they have to get the goals against down. So if you are Tom Fitzgerald and you're looking at how to fix this, you're probably looking for a goaltender. You're probably looking for somebody who might be willing to take on Vanacek's money and bring somebody else in who can split the time with Schmid, because Schmid is seen by the team as a very good young goaltender who's going to be a starter. The other option you have is to go out and find somebody where you can send Schmid down to Utica to get the time down there, because maybe you say, you know what, we don't want to hurt his confidence, send him down to Utica, get him some starts, and bring somebody else in. Talk to a team like Detroit. Talk to a team like Montreal. Somebody who's carrying 3 goaltenders and say, look, what will it take for us to pry one of them away from you and try to make the money work? For New Jersey, I do think that would be in their best interest to make a change in net. Just to send the message. Just to send the message that things aren't going the way that you want them to, and that not everybody's job is necessarily safe. Because again, that's part and parcel of what you want to avoid is players playing like their jobs are safe. Because when they do, generally they're not playing as well. Now, once Hischier comes back, that should help as well with a lot of the numbers. But the other thing you have to do if you're the general manager of this team is make sure that losing one player doesn't necessarily cause the whole thing to just kind of collapse. And Meyer being out probably hurts as well, but the minus 12 in 14 games tells me there's been some issues with Meyer's defensive game as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. I do think that there's a bit of an overreaction by some about the New Jersey Devils' recent record. I think that it is partly because of their schedule, but let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your time. I will talk to you again soon.